Welcome to the Heart of the Cards, a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what we're dealt. With your hosts, Dan Green and Eric Stuart.
Welcome to the Heart of the Cards. I am so delighted that we have our special guest today, Veronica Taylor. But as usual, we also have Eric Stuart, who is an amazing kaiba, also a fantastic voiceover director and a wonderful musician and lead singer-songwriter for his Epitomus, the Eric Stuart Band. And Eric, who am I?
Oh, you. Let's see. Dan Green. Oh, right. You are my rival/friend, the great voice of Yami and Yugi. Also an amazing writer, director, and I don't know, I hear also a really good cook.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. My kids must want something from me. So, but more importantly, we're here with Veronica Taylor, who I've had the pleasure of directing in a one-act play, doing some theater. She has a background in theater and television, also doing voiceover for documentary stuff and audiobooks and various animated things. But you probably are most familiar with her work in anime as the voice of Ash Ketchum in the first 8 seasons of Pokemon, as well as also being in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Yu-Gi-Oh! And Shaman King and so much other anime. One of our favorite colleagues, Veronica Taylor, it's a privilege to have you with us today.
Hey, you guys. Thanks for having me on your show. I'm a big fan.
Aw, thank you.
First-time caller, long-time fan.
I wonder if anybody will recognize that reference.
Yeah.
We're all such old
if
farts.
you listen to NPR, you would, because they have call-in shows all the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
How are you? Thanks for having me on.
We are so excited to have you with us.
Yes.
And in the Heart of the Cards, we have this log line. It's a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what you're dealt, which means good things and bad. But we've been focusing on Joseph Cambell's The Hero's Journey as a template, as a reference to get into some conversation that's maybe a little bit more unique than what you might have heard us be interviewed about in other interviews or other areas where we're able to speak to people. This gets to be a conversation between friends about things that, for whatever reason, are relevant to us. And we don't necessarily think of ourselves as heroes in our own life, but we are at the very least our central protagonist.
Right. But I do think, too, that so many of us are the heroes of our own stories. And
I agree.
There are heroes within ourselves and heroes amongst us in our communities. So
I agree.
I think it's interesting to have a little chat about our personal stories, I suppose, and to see how those stories reach others and how much we all have in common.
Yep, exactly. I've shared on a few different occasions how often I've also been my own antagonist, which is an unfortunate truth.
Well, we all have many voices in our heads, and we get paid for that.
Unfortunately,
too.
we get paid to make them.
That's right.
Of them.
And I get paid to be your antagonist.
That's right.
Quite literally.
Yes.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
It works well. So Eric and I had gone through this progression of the hero's journey. We didn't hit all of the points, but the last thing we were talking about was the experience of encountering what's referred to as the goddess, sort of this supernatural element in your life that can save you from a horrible fate just in the nick of time, or can serve as some enduring inspiration. But we don't necessarily have to go through this progression as it's listed out arbitrarily. What I'd like to open up for the conversation is to give Veronica the chance to address any number of the steps that we've covered so far. So sort of a dealer's choice as to what it is you want to respond to or speak to, or that's speaking to you, and we'll see where that leads us. What do you think about that?
Super.
All right. And I have not conditioned Veronica to provide any answers or say any nice things about me.
No,
if that happens,
but the check is in the
purely
mail.
by accident. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
You know, it occurs to
that
me,
Venmo
though.
went through, though, right, Veronica?
It definitely. PayPal.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
That the interesting thing about the meeting with the goddess, I think, and for all of us, is that we all have I think that's multi-layered or even multi-leveled because there's...
And with the gender, we're dispensing with the idea of the gender of it, but the function of it,
Well, you gain items that help you in the future, and that can be, I think, your training, but also a job, because sometimes you need that job that then helps you get the next job. So all of these things, but without training, you couldn't have gotten the job. So in some ways, there are many, quote, meeting with the goddesses.
Well, let me ask you this. Training is so essential, and talk about how that is different than talent.
Wow, I think, gosh, this is just what I think personally, but so many of us have so many talents. And the only way that you can really discover your talent or flesh it out is through training. So many of us can draw, but once you get some training, you really can create a different sort of masterpiece. So many of us can act. I really think every kid should be in their school play. Every kid should take improv in elementary school, or even just basic acting classes, because they teach you about a basic human skill, which is talking and listening. And
I thought you were going to say lying.
No, talking and listening, about really being able to, when you play the scene, you have to listen so that you can respond. And but your training helps you to be able to do that on a bigger and different level.
Absolutely.
And to create a character that you can sustain. But, I played Peppermint Patty in my 8th grade school play.
I've read the reviews.
I'm sure,
they're fantastic.
Thank you so much. One of my favorite roles. But that was me being in the play and me, I don't know that I necessarily sustained that character, but through training, I then played Alice in Wonderland when I was in high school, and that was a really tough. It was children's theater, but theater for children by children, but that was a really demanding role, and if I hadn't taken classes and I hadn't been in other plays, I wouldn't have been able to do that role. And it was so difficult that I think I was a sophomore in high school. I thought maybe I should drop out, that maybe I couldn't do
Really?
it. Yeah.
There's a lot of what you're talking about that we can reflect steps of the hero's journey off of, like the call to adventure is a little bit what you're talking about, but also doubting yourself and feeling like you maybe should give up. That's actually a step that's coming up that Eric and I haven't covered yet, but there are these things that tempt you off the path. And so that's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's also because the path isn't always clear. So what's tempting you off the path, you're not really sure if you were on it to begin with.
And if it's because you're doubting yourself, your abilities, that voice can be pretty convincing because it sounds reasonable.
Sure, yeah.
And obviously the environment you were in was supportive for you trying these taking that step onto that stage and taking these roles on. You weren't in a situation where that wasn't what people are supposed to do. You followed something, right? You followed one of those passions or that call.
Yeah, the thing about this specifically, when I played Alice in Wonderland, it's my favorite book, but my mom was directing the play. So there was a different pressure on me to be able to play the role to prove that she didn't cast me because I was her daughter.
Right.
So, I mean, that was a whole nother part. And, it was quite complicated.
Did you get notes when you went home?
No, not when I went home. But my mom is a great director, and we definitely got a lot of notes. You know, what happens for anyone who doesn't know, when you're rehearsing a play, you have rehearsal for a certain amount of time, and then you do the show, whether it's rehearsal of the whole thing, and then you sit at the end and get notes on particular parts, or you're performing it and you get notes afterwards, depending on how the audience reacted. So we would definitely get a lot of notes at rehearsal, but that never came home with us.
That's great that
we had other things to do.
Yes, that you guys were able to turn off that dynamic and just be mom and daughter when you got home, and not
for sure
took it home with you, because that's a lot of pressure to not only be directed by your parent, but and then having to, like, you're always around them. It's like
true. That's true. My parents have always been great about giving me notes for any performance that they've seen of mine in a wonderful way.
And your father's an actor.
Yeah, and my mom and my dad and my stepmother too.
Yeah.
So, they've come to performances and given me notes in grad school. My mom, she came to see a play I was in, and she sat with me afterwards and really worked on some stuff that improved it quite a bit.
Well, that brings up a question I just have based on that. So, coming from a parent that it was in the entertainment, my mother's a dancer, so when I wanted to get into the arts, there was definitely the fear of that lifestyle, right? You being brought up surrounded by actors, wanting to be an actor, did you ever feel hey, this is a tough business, look at what we're having to deal with, you maybe should also become a doctor? Or was it, if this is what you want to do it?
My parents have always been very supportive of my choices, but they never pushed me into certainly not being an actor, because the highs are high, but there are many more lows that are incredibly low.
Yes.
And so they never said, you should be an actor. That's a great idea. But they never said, I really don't think you should do this.
Right.
So they were supportive of everything. They came to all my soccer games, my plays, my, whatever. They were pretty great.
That's great. That is good to hear.
Yeah. I'm incredibly lucky like that. And that has influenced me to try to be incredibly supportive of my family, my daughter, even people that I meet at Comic-Cons, We all need to know that there's someone in our corner to say, you're amazing. And that's the boat you can float on for a while. Yeah.
And getting that support from people in, your parents are your parents, but they're also in the business. So getting a compliment or that sort of, that praise from someone who actually knows that world also means something. I'm sure your parents could also be brutally honest about stuff, giving you.
Oh, they're only honest.
Right.
I was going to say praise. I don't know that I've specifically gotten praise. Like, that was amazing. But their constructive criticism has been praise. You know what I mean?
Which makes it easier to take the compliments because you know it's coming from a place of honesty.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's quite lucky.
So tell us a little bit more about those early years. We talked about the call to adventure, and for you, if we're talking about your career as an actor, how early did that start?
I was in a play when I was 5. I was in Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and I played Goldilocks.
So this is pre-Peppermint Patty.
That's way before,
what role did you play?
What?
What role did you play in Goldilocks and the Three Bears?
I was Goldilocks. I had blonde hair.
Of course you were. And that I'm sure they gave you the role for other reasons, too.
Who knows?
You could remember the lines.
Yeah, this is I was in first grade. I did remember the lines.
Wow.
I remember my mom working on the lines with me so I could memorize them and deliver them.
Yeah,
that was my first. Before that, I think I tap danced. My mom had a TV show, and my brother and I tap danced on that show because we were taking our class. We were guests on the show. So that was probably my first TV appearance. And then
I'm still a little hung up on my mom had a TV show.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Wait
That's
a
like
second.
the name of a TV show.
Yeah, can we you were tap dancing with your brother on your mom's TV show?
So,
that's not like what everyone says.
Yeah, I know.
I can see the commercials for the situation comedy.
If only.
I love how nonchalant Veronica is.
Next time on My Mom Has a TV Show.
This is a long...
Did you learn that new routine? No, Mom's going to kill us.
Well, it
we
was
have
our
to go on air in 15 minutes.
Our tap dancing class was a guest on the show. So we tap dance. I don't know. We still have our tap dancing costumes. As a matter of fact, I was just looking at my brother's. I have it here in the apartment. But anyway, they're very small. But so that was probably my first TV appearance. And then in the middle of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You know the part where Goldilocks, the chair collapses. She's trying all the chairs.
Oh, spoiler alert! Hello.
Well, some people have heard the story. This isn't the nadir of her existence. So, but this leads her to befriending the bears, perhaps, depending on whose version you read. But they, when the chair collapsed, I remember specifically thinking, "Hold for the laugh," before I went on with my line. And that was...
Wait, this is first grade?
Yeah.
This is first grade that you knew
That's
to hold for laughter?
Yeah. I don't know how. I mean, I must have... from seeing plays and from what I learned of acting up until that point. But I remember thinking that, and I remember that moment being, this is what I want to be when I grow up. This is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I pursued that, amongst other things. I played soccer, I took a lot of dance, all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't until I graduated from grad school with my MFA in acting that I thought, oh gosh, should I have thought about something else? But it was too late by then. But yeah, I decided when I was 5. So I was kind of in the middle of doing my thing that I decided that this would be my thing.
Did it feel like a decision or simply acknowledging that is what you were about, that is where you were at? Or was it more like, no, I'm going to actively choose?
That's an interesting question because...
When you say you graduated and didn't even consider anything else, I guess that's what made me think of...
Yeah.
It wasn't so much perhaps a realization for you as just this thing that you accepted is you.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever identified it as such, but I love being an actor, and I guess I loved it then too. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Another check in the mail. But I really... I don't know. It's something that... I identify quite strongly with, I guess. I love to be able to be other people, but I don't find that I need it to work through problems like many actors I read about.
Right.
It's kind of their therapy to work through problems they're having.
And that's not only true of actors. Obviously, there's other creative fields where it's essentially used in the same way by the artist.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I just like being other people.
I know what you mean.
Up until you graduated, you didn't really have to think about the financial part of probably what that life choice was going to be as well, right?
Oh no, I totally did actually, because I
you were paying attention to that.
Yeah,
okay,
because
that's good.
I first of all, I could
Your
see
parents were professionals.
what my parents' careers and all of my 4 parents were all freelancers. So you know right away from the beginning that there's no money in it. So you have to do things that you love. And I went to, after high school, I went to college right away. And then after college, I had a year working in restaurants and doing theater in D.C., and then I went on tour for 2 years. And then I went to grad school, and then I moved to New York after that. So I definitely knew the financial ramifications of being an actor. And it your plan actually is what I've been saying for a long time in terms of education is I think that having that gap year of figuring out what you want to do so that you then focus on that in the next phase of your education is key. So that you can try some things out. Like you spent time out there doing this thing and then said, yeah, this is what I want to now continue my education doing. So I think it's helpful. Yeah, and I originally thought that I would teach, so I would have that as my fallback plan. So to teach, you should have an MFA. So that's really why I got my master's. And
interesting. Well, I was going to raise that you were already working in the field.
Yeah.
And not everybody would say, therefore, I need to get more training since I'm already getting work.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. For teaching purposes, an MFA is required for...
That's right.
For the positions that you want.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, too, certainly because we're talking about the hero's journey, there was even though I had been on the road, I mean, the 2 years of touring that I did before grad school, we did a contemporary and a Shakespeare. It was with the National Players, which my parents toured with also, but earlier, not the same time I did. But we did a Shakespeare and a contemporary. We loaded in our sets. We had big sets. We put up all of our lighting. We had to repack it every night. We took the show down, and we didn't have a sit down for a week or 2 weeks or a month or anything like, quote, normal tours have. We were bus and truck. We loaded in the morning, did the show, and then took it all down and moved on. So you also learned about everything that goes into a production. That's right. So, and while we were doing the show, some people stage managed, you ran the lights, you had to do the sound. So you would come off from the scene and go right to the light board and take that over while the other person went on stage. And you had to keep, I was company manager in the second year, so I had to take care of all the money. I had to work on all the directions. Back then, we didn't have GPS, so every night I'd have to get the map out and write out all the directions for people. Other people booked the hotels. You know, it was all...
Like a paper map?
Yeah, like a big road atlas,
What?
which I still
buy. What's great about that, Veronica, is that you, in that environment, you had a chance to basically be everything that is involved in the production.
Right.
So that at the end of the tour, you could have said, the acting part was great, but I really liked running lights.
That's right.
Or the acting part was great, but I want to be a tour manager. That's what I really want. That's a great experience to be able to just touch upon all of that, because most people don't even realize how much goes into a production, and those might be the things that they like to do too.
Well, part of my undergraduate, I have a bachelor's of arts in acting, and part of the requirements for that were that we had to direct, we didn't have to stage manage anything, but we did have to sew, we had to work on costumes, we had to work on lighting, we had to work on sound.
That's great.
You had to do all of that. And at my university, everything was old, so we were actually splicing for the sound. We had to splice the stuff together.
Nice. Yes, rocking reels with a razor blade. I can tell you all about that.
Yeah, because everything was really old, so there was no newfangled technology.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
Well, in my own education, they wouldn't let us, as undergrads, perform on stage for the first year.
Right.
And we were part of the stage crew.
Yep.
And Eric makes that great point that it does expose you to other things that you might want to do in the creation of theater that isn't necessarily acting, but that's also good for you as an actor. It teaches you some good grounding, right? I think it's easy for certain actors, depending on their personas and personalities, to feel like it's all about them.
Right.
Which is not really what a theater experience is.
Well, I think that's really true, yeah.
I would say as a musician, my best friend is the sound guy.
Well, yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah, like you want to be friends with him or her because they can make your show either great or absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So
and also when you work on the crew, you see the show every night, and then you can really see how it changes. And again, it all goes back to talking and listening. And even when we all nowadays work in the booth alone, you still are playing off of what will be there. So it's never just about you. Even a one-person show is still about the actor and the director and the audience.
And the audience.
Yeah.
Right. That precious, ephemeral, temporal community that exists in the evening of theater is something that's so special. And I think that a lot of people, unless you participate in it, it's sort of hard to really convey what that feels like.
Right.
Yeah. So Eric and I have both had the pleasure of directing Veronica.
Yes.
And I can say for myself, I've also, we did a David Ives play, and your scene partner was the amazingly talented Mark Thompson. And when I was giving you guys notes, I had every awareness that I was working with not just talented and not just experienced, but also trained actors. We were all on the same page. We had a nomenclature we each understood, but there was also a way of approaching the work that had just an implicit structure because we had done shows before, right? And we knew what that required.
Right.
So, and you guys took direction beautifully.
Based on that sort of ensemble experience and understanding how that works in the theater world, did you find, and I know you've done a couple of prelay shows where you do work as an ensemble, but
Turtles
did you
was
find,
that for a while.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Did you find that the shift into voice acting where you're pretty much alone and working in a vacuum
Audiobooks
was well, also, I mean, audiobooks normally is, single voice narrating. I'm talking about a show that in final production is an ensemble, but not created that way. Did you miss, how did you make that transition? Did you miss, not because I know you as an actor, I've had the pleasure of working with you as a director, and you are all about how the team sounds.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been about you as an actor. I've never felt that while working with you. It seems like you are trying to bring that theater ensemble vibe into the solo performance that you have to do based on working in ADR.
Yeah, I think, thank you. That's so lovely of you to say.
I totally back that
Thank
up.
you. Lovely of you to back up.
That's a signature element of working with Veronica Taylor.
Well, the thing is, when you are an actor, your role, literally, your job, is to bring whatever that in front of you, whatever that is, to life. And so it's not about me. It's about me fulfilling what's necessary. So if it's an audiobook, I think about, how would the author read this? What is the author thinking? And what do they really want from these characters? And I tell the story as if they were telling it. I try to get in their head. That's my job, is to tell the story and use the voices that I create for the characters to further that story. Not to be like, oh my God, those characters she does are amazing. It's about, you shouldn't notice me. You should just notice the story. And I think the same when you are working in a group, whether it's a radio play or a prelay cartoon, or whether you're alone in the booth working off of a picture, you're still trying to fill what's necessary. And with the help of the director, you know that where you're going with it is in the right direction. Because you can do any kooky thing you want, but if it doesn't serve the story or the moment or the character itself, there's no point. It's just a distraction.
Yes. And I think that people that play well with others can then jump into a booth and record alone and make it seem like they're playing well with others.
Because you have to use your imagination, and you have to suspend that imagination to be able to know that whatever voice you're using will fit with what the other people are using.
Talking and listening, one of the first things you said, you're going to be better at recreating that when you don't have that, if you're good at doing that in the first place.
That's right. I think it's really necessary. So I think you're the same thing. You're a better actor if you have training and you kind of know, you don't have to think about what you're doing. So when I look at a script, I can skim down through the lines and imagine what the other characters are saying, what they want from me, and then I can more easily jump into what I want from them, what my objective is. But that's because I've been trained and I worked so hard for so long, lying on the floor, breathing, working scenes, all that stuff. And now I can throw it away. But without that, you have nerves, you're self-conscious, you don't give your best performance because you don't really know what you're doing. Or, like we said before, you have talent, but you don't know exactly how to plug it in, or you don't have the self-confidence to just let it go.
Right. And you don't have tools to address problems that you may even be aware of.
Right.
Like, I know I'm not getting this, but that's just an awareness of what it has yet to be.
That's right.
And not necessarily...
And we've talked about nervousness and how we deal with being on stage or performing when you're overthinking things. Do you have some tips that you do for yourself? How do you deal with, or do you not get incredibly nervous or stage fright. What is your secret that you do?
I feel like repetition is good for me. I'm certainly more superstitious, so I don't have to wear the same underwear and socks to everything, but I certainly do the same things when I'm in a play. Sometimes I look over all the lines before, that's part of my warm-up, is to just go back over everything. So it's repetition. I definitely get very nervous before I speak as myself in front of a crowd, but as a character, it's easier when I can be a character. And I do say, especially for kids or even grown-ups who have to speak in front of a class or for work or some kind of presentation, it's easier if you think of, first of all, the audience. What is the story you're trying to tell? Why are you telling it in this moment? So that you can jump outside of yourself to remember why you're there. What's the big picture? And then also, don't think about it as yourself speaking. You can, if you're really nervous, become a character.
Right.
That's so funny. I just said that that's exactly
right?
what I was talking about.
Oh,
yeah,
that's an old piece of advice. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, you can be you
I've
can be a character.
heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
In a sense, you have the character to hide behind.
Totally.
If
To
you're afraid of
become.
being seen.
Because as yourself, you're
Great
self-conscious.
minds think alike. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great minds think
Or at
alike,
least
and
you-
so do
you-
ours.
Or at least you two. I'm just taking a look. No, that's great. That's good to. That's I find that interesting as a performer to hear how other performers use that energy and deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about. We were just addressing things to get over your nerves, and let's expand that into what are some of the trials. What are some of the hard things about pursuing this path?
Oh, gosh.
And it doesn't necessarily even have to be like I had this lousy experience at an actual job. Obviously, the demands of a career far expand beyond the actual execution of the work.
Yeah.
Right? Especially pursuing a career of freelancing and we don't live in a culture that makes it easy to support creative behavior.
That's very true.
Right?
And I think from a woman's perspective, it's even harder because there's not always the work there for you. There's a lot of bias. There's I certainly I mean there's not as many roles for women. Certainly how you look affects whether you get cast. I think the fact that how many roles are there for how many women have plastic surgery or some kind of altering facial or body altering work done so that they can keep playing certain roles because there aren't any roles once you get to a certain spot. Even in voiceover, there are fewer roles that you get. You get slotted into certain things.
Even though you sound like you did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They'll think of you as being older.
I have to fight for auditioning for kids, and I only get the mothers now because I am a mother.
Right.
So,
But you sound like you did 20 years ago.
Yeah, sure. I say to prove it. But that
Giggly
it's
girly
how you're
giggle.
seen. And for women especially, it's very difficult. So there's that. There's, I think, we all audition and audition and audition for so many things. And there are so many things that we don't get cast in. So the difficulty right there is knowing if you'll ever work again. I think I feel that every day.
Sure.
But that's a hard part.
There aren't any guarantees.
No, there's no guarantee. And it doesn't matter how, quote, famous you are because people are famous in groups of people. So one person might think you're amazing and another person won't even give you the time of day. So again, it has nothing to do with us, the physical actor. You just have to get out there and do your 100% best work every day.
There are people who celebrate some of the work that we're known for, and there are people in the industry who would use that as a negative against us. Because they presume they understand what that work is and that that's what we're limited to. And,
Right. Right.
Or though it's easy for people. I'm not saying everybody does, but it's easy for those assumptions to be made. People don't really like to think.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's why when you go to audition to be a policeman, they want you to wear a policeman uniform.
Right.
Because they can't imagine.
That's
Right.
That's
A policeman wearing regular clothes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bring a lab coat, bring a police jacket, bring a, Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, I would say on that branch that one of the trials is very often the people who are giving you, who have the power to grant you the work, are some of the least creative people that you'll meet.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, not always,
Yeah,
but sometimes.
maybe we could push that further to they're bound by money, and it's the
for
bankroll
sure.
of
And maybe
it.
it's not it's not their own lack of
That's it.
perception, right? It's that they're constricted
They're
in
constricted.
other ways. It's true.
Perhaps they are
Yeah.
creative, but their creativity has no space. They're not
Right,
given
right.
any of that. It's just about money, and so
Sure. As someone who's been in those meetings from the other side of production.
More so
when
than
someone has
Veronica and I, just so the audience understands.
Just when someone has an amazingly creative and cool idea, it's the bottom line is the dollar.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't go into naming some of the celebrity voice actors that have been cast recently in some films, but they're great actors, but they might not necessarily be the right choice for that voice of a character, but they'll bring in money in the box office.
so you think.
And
So you think.
Well, this
And
is
what-
the assumption.
That's right.
Right. Instead of, wow, that was an amazing performance.
Right. I use this example along the same lines as well, like the Kung Fu Panda. The Angelina Jolie is in that movie. Why?
Right.
She had like 10 lines.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And she's amazing. Of course, she's amazing. But I also know a handful of completely unknown actors who would have sounded just as good, if not better.
Right.
And which is why when someone goes and puts their foot down and really says, no, this is what we need to do, and it works. It's, I give them so much more credit that they can get through all of that red tape and all of that to just say, no, what's the best person for the role?
Right, exactly.
For the project.
Right.
Yep.
And it's hard not to get bitter.
Well, yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep yourself open to the process,
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I was just trying to
So-
think of what do you do?
Yeah,
we
go
all
ahead,
have
please.
those. It's hard not to be bitter and hateful because you just want to work, but
It's painful.
Yeah.
And it's scary.
Yeah, that's right. But you have to try to find a way to, I think, always look at your big picture. What are you here for? What are you here to do?
Right.
And or I should say, what am I here to do? And then really start refocusing. Maybe prep a little bit more on the next audition, or try to push the boundaries a little bit, or things like that. That then you still are doing your best work, even if you're not getting
Right.
cast.
Did you ever have a voice in your head say, "You got that MFA, be a teacher, stop being a performer"?
I've never had
Teaching is
time to
safer.
be a teacher because
Yeah.
I've been working, and then I had a lot of field trips to go on with my daughter and things like that. So I did teach voiceover at NYU for a short time for the later learning classes. So not
Okay.
when you're getting your BA, but for like learning
I see.
annex type thing that
see.
NYU had.
Uh-huh.
So I did that. But I find that I'm not so reliable to show up every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So because I have other work that I've been lucky enough to have.
And that you have to prioritize because it's more rare.
Yes, exactly. So since I still have some work coming, I still pursue that. But I certainly, I don't give up the idea of teaching. But I like doing a little bit more than teaching right now.
Right. And you certainly wouldn't want to enter into a career path feeling as though you were potentially going to become resentful because you gave up something that you really wanted more.
Yeah.
Or that you're not really going to be engaged because it doesn't really speak to you.
Yeah.
Those things matter.
It all matters. And I think, too, when you're teaching, you often get a chance to direct more. Or if you're at a college, you can do more in the theater department. So there's other outlets that it's not so much that you're giving up, but you're just your path has shifted. But my path hasn't shifted that way yet.
Right.
Also, something that we also benefit from, which is such a bonus in our world because of the craziness of the fandom that we're involved with, is that we get to meet people who have grown up watching us, listening to us. And if anything, like that's, to me, the litmus test. You sometimes doubt, what am I doing? Is it funny? Is it working? Is this worth it? The people that we meet at the conventions who connect with what we've done makes at least me feel like, okay, this is maybe what I thought wasn't, is this really this special a role? I had this small part in this, or, did anybody ever even see it? And then it's like, no, that was a big deal. And I think that, instead of the people that are making the decisions as that's important in terms of, do they like me? Yes. For the hiring me. Yes. But the audience, to me, is the most important in terms of the feedback I get. Did they like it? Then it's working.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Very true. I think for me, also meeting people at conventions has been incredibly special. And in that sense, it is kind of a teaching moment in and of itself. I find it such an honor to hear the stories of people's experiences through things that I've worked on, because they're talking to me, so I hear about it. But just to be that slice of life, to hear about getting up on Saturday morning or rushing home from school or going to their grandmother's house, people who've met their spouse, their best friend, all of these communities that have formed, and to be a part of that just by doing my job, that's been quite an honor. And I've learned so much about myself through that. I've learned a lot about just human beings. And then with that, I take that and put that back into my work.
Right.
So,
yeah, it is motivating. It is very motivating.
And it's I was going to say fulfilling, but it's more filling, like it, I don't know, it helps me have a better understanding of just life in general, I guess. And as an actor, you use that to create other characters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Veronica, that was really wonderful of you to share all that stuff. The hero's journey has a lot of elements that pertain to anybody's life, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your reflections on these universal challenges and these universal things we have when we're trying to go forward in our lives. So thank you for that.
Gosh, it's been such an honor. I can't even believe that you asked me on your show, because as I said, I'm a big fan. But, we all have been friends for so long, but we don't.
It's true.
I think I've done most of the talking. So to say we don't get a chance to chat like this, meaning me do all the talking. But it has caused me to really reflect on things I haven't thought about for a long time. And I really appreciate that. It's just nice to spend time with both of you.
Always.
And we're not going to ask you to tap dance this time,
okay.
But maybe next time. But I will say this on more of a heartfelt note. I consider you a very close friend. We've been friends for a long time. And of course that developed over working together. But it's just nice to be able to share some of the other things in your world with the audience, because I care so much about you, and I think you've got an interesting journey that you've taken and that you're still taking, and you're also incredibly talented, but just a good person.
Oh, thank
you're just
you.
a good person.
Well,
It's true. Everyone says that.
Yeah, and I think that, but I also love the fact that we can put a spotlight on the whole picture, and of course down the line we'll have to have you back to talk even more about the things that you've done, because it's very interesting to learn about someone that you care about and just dive deeper into their world.
Well, thank you. Also, isn't it crazy that we are all kind of best friends, really. We've known each other for so long.
Oh, yeah.
And been through
Oh, yeah.
so
Yep.
much. And yet we met because of work. So we all met because of something we love doing, and we were lucky enough to be cast in it, in any of these projects. But gosh, it's amazing, isn't it? I am so
Sometimes-
lucky.
Absolutely. Me too. I feel exactly the same. And
me too.
to borrow a Joseph Campbell phrase, following your bliss is
Yeah.
kind of what he reduced it to. And I think sometimes when you do that, you encounter people that you really connect with and you really resonate
I
with.
think that's true. I mean, it's the thing of what you're putting out there is what you're getting back. And so all of us have really opened our hearts, and the shows that we've worked on together, we have
Yeah.
committed 100% to, whether it was required or not. And I think
Yeah.
doing that enabled us to open our hearts and make friends, and also
Right.
create some
and we
pretty great
address
stuff.
the fear, and sometimes there's some bitterness, but I think I could speak for us all to say that we're very grateful
Yeah.
for the journeys
Oh,
we've
yeah.
had.
And how our paths have crossed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that note, Eric, did you want to add anything else before I take us away?
No, just wonderful interview. I'm very excited about this episode.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, me too. Awesome. And thank you for listening to The Heart of the Cards, a conversation about creativity, inspiration, and dealing with what you're dealt. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of the Cards with Dan Green and Eric Stuart. We hope this conversation in some way spoke to you. Whatever your journey, we look forward to crossing paths again in the next episode. This is Veronica Taylor, and on behalf of Andromeda Productions, we wish you well.
Andromeda, always a sound choice.